It's been a while since I've talked about the Branch Davidians, aka the Waco Siege, one of the most famous cults of all time. I did a video on it forever ago, but it's a little outdated, so I figured I'd talk about him again. Who was David Koresh? How'd the Branch Davidians start? What actually happened in Waco, Texas? Let's get into it. So how'd the Branch Davidians start? It's actually an interesting story. Let's start at the beginning. The very beginning. Back in the mid-1800s, there was a group called the Millerites. They fabricated this mysterious Bible math that they believed predicted when the apocalypse was going to take place. It's a mishmash of 3 different verses from 3 different books of the Bible written across a span of thousands of years. Kind of like Bible code. Complete bullshit. Anyways, they thought it was real, and that's what's important. The Millerites calculated their math and said they believed the end was going to come in 1843. The date finally rolled around, and nothing, of course. So they said, hey, we see what happened. There's no year 0. It goes from the year 1 BCE to the year 1 CE. That's our bad, bro. We meant 1844, not 1843. They really hyped it up. The members sold all their stuff and donated it to the church in preparation for what they called the Advent, the rapture followed by Jesus' return. It ruined people's lives. It went down in history as the Great Disappointment. After that, the church split into 3 factions. The group that believed there was no Bible math and they were full of shit, the group that believed the Bible math was correct but they needed to tweak a few variables, and the group that believed that something really did happen in 1844. Jesus came back invisibly. But the Millerite movement was no more. Those 3 groups went on to form their own sects. That's SECTS. The founder of Seventh-day Adventists, Ellen G. White, and the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses, Charles Taze Russell, went to the same fractured Millerite church for a while. From the group that believed that they had the math right, but needed to tweak a few variables. Charles Taze Russell went on to create the Jehovah's Witnesses religion and make end times prediction after end times prediction until he died on Halloween night 1916. And of course, as I mentioned, Ellen G. White went on to create the Seventh-day Adventists. Fast forward to 1929. A Seventh-day Adventist named Victor Houteff published a book called The Shepherd's Rod, the 144,000, a call for reformation. Obviously, the number 144,000 is important to both Seventh-day Adventists and Jehovah's Witnesses, but that's beyond the scope of the video. I'll get into the importance of that later. Anyways, he wrote the book, and the Seventh-day Adventist leadership didn't really like that, so they disfellowshipped him and his followers. After leaving the Seventh-day Adventists, they created a new group known by a few different names. They were called the Shepherd's Rod, the Rod, or just the Davidians. They settled near Waco, Texas in 1935 on Mount Carmel to prepare for the impending apocalypse. In 1955, Houteff died, and the followers became the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists, under the leadership of Houteff's wife, Florence. Florence made the fatal mistake for any religion. She gave a concrete date for the apocalypse. Seems like kind of a trend among offshoots of the Millerite movement. The date she set was April 22nd, 1959. When it rolled around and nothing happened, people left. How to destroy people's lives and lose half your membership with this one simple trick. Anyways, in 1962, she admitted she was wrong, disbanded her following, and sold off the property where they all lived on Mount Carmel near Waco. Seeing the signal that she was giving up on the group, an opportunist named Ben Roden took the opportunity to seize control of the group. He told the members to get off the dead rod, aka Florence, and move to the living branch, aka him. He gained control of Mount Carmel and told his followers that Jesus would come once they reached a level of moral maturity, so they should continue to purify themselves. Good idea. Don't set a hard date. Make it ambiguous. I guess he learned from his predecessor's mistakes. In 1978, Roden died and the church split again. This time, it was between his wife Lois and his son George. Lois had some help from a young convert named Vernon Howell. Her, Mister? I don't know what the masculine version of mistress is. Anyway, she was sleeping with him. Behind Roden's back. But it wasn't long before Lois died, and George took the opportunity to take control of her congregation. But Lois's paramour, Vernon Howell, turned out to be significantly more charismatic than George, and before long, he'd taken control of the congregation. Here's a quote from an article about what happened next. It's from pbs.org. Link is in the description. Quote, in late 1987, Howell returned to Mount Carmel in camouflage with 7 male followers, armed with 5 .223 caliber semi-automatic assault rifles, 2 .22 caliber rifles, 2 12-gauge shotguns, and nearly 400 rounds of ammunition. During the fight, George Roden was shot in the chest and hands. He and his followers went on trial for attempted murder. The 7 were acquitted, and a mistrial was declared in Howell's case. Howell told the jury he and his men went to Mount Carmel to find evidence of corpse abuse by Roden, and their shots were aimed aimed at a tree, end quote. After the non-guilty verdict was issued, Howell invited the prosecutors for ice cream at Mount Carmel. After gaining control, Howell immediately tried to assert his spiritual authority. His first action was to change his name to David Koresh. So that's the story. That was the spoiler of the century for me when I was reading about it for the first time. Next, we're going to talk about what happened to the group after that. Before we get into it, I just want to mention a couple of things. If you've heard this before, skip forward 30 seconds. If you're on a desktop, hit the L key 3 times. If you like what I do, you can support me in a few ways. First, there's Patreon. That's probably the best way. But if you want to get something back for your support, you can check out my Teespring or my Etsy shop. I sell all kinds of interesting stuff on there. Mostly game cartridge and box stands and controller stands for every game system from the Atari 2600 to the PlayStation 4. I also sell these dumpster fire candle holders. You can put custom lettering on them. Up until now, they've said 2020 or fuck you 2020 or I survived 2020 or whatever. But if you hit the personalize option, I'll put whatever you want on the front. Anyways, give it a look. You might find something you like on there. Okay, back to the story. So what happened after that? Well, as it turns out, David Koresh, aka Vernon Howell, wasn't the most stable fella around. He kind of came unhinged, if he was ever hinged to begin with. In 1993, the government came to the compound because they heard some disturbing reports of the goings-on inside, and the reports were completely correct. David Koresh was surrounded by extremists who basically had no connection to the outside world and no guardrails. There were no limits to what he was willing to do. It was a full-blown cult in the truest sense, and they were becoming a danger to the people around them. The siege took place from February 28th to April 19th, 1993. 51 days, and it was carried out by the FBI, Texas state law enforcement, and the U.S. military. It started when ATF attempted to raid the compound because they were stockpiling guns, which resulted in a firefight, ending the lives of 4 federal agents and 6 Davidians. After 51 days, the FBI finally made the first move by throwing in tear gas. A fire broke out inside, resulting in the loss of 76 people, including women, children, and David Koresh himself.
Bonnie, for the last 15 minutes, we've watched this M60 vehicle, this combat engineering vehicle, make large holes in the side of this building and pump tear gas in there. At times, as you well know, tear gas can be incendiary, and apparently this is what's happened. And it looks like now we have a very large-scale fire breaking out on what must be the south side, right near the front side of this building.
These people were cultists, that's indisputable. But in my opinion, loss of life is a tragedy no matter what the circumstances. I don't want to see anybody hurt, so I feel that mourning the loss is appropriate, even though they were a dangerous cult. Interestingly enough, Alex Jones came to the compound as a reporter and raised hell about the FBI violating their rights and not using proper procedure.
I don't give a damn. Oh yeah, you're not going to do anything to me. These people are murderers. These people are murderers. I'm sick and tired of hearing your lies. You got a big problem, buddy. You sit over here. I'm not afraid of you guys. I'm a law-abiding citizen, and I'm sick of it. You sit over here and you talk about how the children huddle in the corner and how the ammunition that they had is what killed them, all the rest of your garbage. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You don't stand up for the Constitution. You stand for zip, not a zero. You have no calm aplomb. It's false, my friend. And let me tell you, a lot of people are writing down your names. You can follow people around. You can harass people. You can back up your bankster buddies. But a revolution of peaceful information is coming. And when it comes time, you people are going to be brought to punishment. You understand? Just like Nuremberg. Just taking orders doesn't cut it, my friend. You understand me? We know the federal government destroyed Oklahoma. It's proven. So you can't sit here. You can assess me all day. I want you to assess me. I've assessed you. A smiley-faced slime ball that sits here in soft pedals and tries to placate the media.
He's a nutcase now, and he was a nutcase back then. But in his defense, this is kind of a controversial subject. In my opinion, the FBI did the right thing. The Branch Davidians were responsible for the loss of 10 people's lives when ATF tried to come in. This was a proportional response to what happened. And as I said before, it was a siege. They gave Koresh 51 days to surrender himself for arrest. He refused. Everything past that point is on Koresh's head. He could have ended it any time in that 2-month period. He chose to go down with the ship and bring everybody with him. So what's going on with the group now? Are they still around? They are, in fact, still around. Same compound in Waco, Texas, but they've chilled out a lot. They don't have David Koresh as the leader anymore, so that helps. Their theology centers around the Bible, focusing heavily on the Old Testament, which they call by its Judaic name, the Tanakh. But they refer to the apocryphal texts too, the stuff that didn't really make it into the Bible. They believe the Old Testament talks about the spirit and mind of God, while the New Testament is just a record of Jesus and his business on earth. They do not believe that Koresh is God, but they believe that he's a prophet, or the Son of God, a lot like how Jehovah's Witnesses view Jesus. They believe that salvation comes from knowing and understanding the seven seals based on these quotes from Koresh. Quote, "Your only savior is my truth. My truth is the seven seals," end quote. That's a letter he wrote April 10th, 1993. Quote, "The seven seals are the last prophecy to a lost word. You have a chance to learn my salvation." Letter from April 11th, 1993, page 2. Quote, "If we disregard the truth of the first seal, we really disregard Christ, who opened it, and in so doing, we disregard God who gave it. The indifference most surely will place one's salvation in jeopardy." Seven Seals Manuscript, page 9. Like Jehovah's Witnesses, and like Seventh-day Adventists, they don't believe in hell. They think after the resurrection, those who haven't received the mind of God will no longer exist, and those who do will enter the kingdom to come and be made as gods. There's no afterlife prior to the resurrection. They believe Jesus was one with the eternal mind of God and therefore attained the title of Christ or Anointed One, just like Koresh. They think Jesus was supposed to teach the seven seals, but he failed in his mission and was crucified. So Koresh took on the responsibility. They believe God's full name is Yahweh Koresh, sharing the surname of his son. David Koresh also believed he was the lamb mentioned in Revelation 5. Most Christians think the lamb mentioned there was supposed to be Jesus, but the exact quote from Revelation 5, 1-2 is, quote, "Then I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll with writing on both sides and sealed with seven seals. And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice, 'Who is worthy to break the seals and open the scroll?'" End quote. Since Jesus failed in his mission to deliver the information about the seven seals and Koresh took the job on himself, I guess that means he's the lamb mentioned in verse 6. Quote, "Then I saw a lamb looking as if it had been slain, standing at the center of the throne, encircled by four living creatures and the elders. The lamb had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. He went and took the scroll from the right hand of him who sat on the throne. And when he had taken it, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Each one had a harp, and they were holding golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of God's people." End quote. Now that Koresh is gone, they believe he was the messianic figure with iniquities from Psalms 40:12. He's viewed as the supposedly prophesied sinful Messiah, and the 2 goats sacrificed on the Day of Atonement from Leviticus 16 allegorically represent Jesus and Koresh. Honestly, it doesn't get much more cult-like than this group. I really feel bad for these people. It's like they've been passed around to different leaders for 100 years. But that's kind of the nature of cults. I can't really blame any of them for taking part in this whole thing. By now, they're the children of the children of the children of original members. When you grow up in a certain environment and have no idea what the outside world is really like, do you have an honest chance of escape? It's like the Amish. They live in their own bubble, and piercing that bubble and escaping to the other side is nearly impossible. It almost never happens. It's heartbreaking to know people on the inside never really had a shot at a real life. But all we can do is talk about it. Talk about their stories, their lives, and sadly, their deaths. Maybe that'll help prevent this kind of thing in the future.